Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "You Didn't Say I Couldn't Use a Miata." I'm working at the big brown delivery company. I am a part-time supervisor inside a large sorting facility. This is a simple act of compliance that may not have had lasting consequences, but it brought a smile to my face in a difficult time. Obviously 2020 was a rough year for nearly any profession. At the time of the story in the spring, my state and a few neighboring states had imposed stay-at-home orders and closed non-essential businesses, leading to way more people buying things online. For the holiday season, we plan well ahead and hire an extra 50% plus of normal staffing, and it's still a shit show trying to get packages through the facility without falling behind. Now imagine a volume increase of over 100% without hiring all those extra workers, while losing the staffing we did have due to people getting sick or not having child care with schools closed. Rather than trying to solve issues in the building by changing policy or trying out new ideas, upper management likes to throw part-time supervisors at problems instead of dealing with them themselves. Most often, we are told that we have to stay for the next shift to help get more volume pushed through. Keeping a safe space between workers is impossible in my work area, so I never stayed to help very long, because I value not getting sick over getting a bigger paycheck. In May, all part-time supervisors on my shift were told we had to come in on our weekend, either working a different shift on Friday or coming in Saturday to deliver packages from our personal vehicles. As soon as we were given the choice, I knew what my compliance would be. My daily driver is a Mazda 3 that I often keep full of various recreation equipment and didn't feel like cleaning out for a day of work. So I hopped in my other, cleaner and more empty car and drove to a facility I'd never been to before, then headed out to meet a driver so I could take packages from him. He was expecting to meet another package car, what we call the brown delivery trucks. He nearly fell out of his truck laughing when I waved him over to my car. A 1994 Miata. I met him twice and only fit 12 or so packages in the car each time. When I called him for a third meet-up, he said he had talked to his boss, who told him not to give me anything else to deliver because it was not worth the time he spent trying to find packages that would fit in the car. I was happy enough. The few people I interacted with that day got a kick out of my compliance. I followed my instructions and got paid at my overtime rate plus mileage to drive my Miata around a nice seaside town on a sunny Saturday afternoon. I'm sure I was not the reason for the update, but they now specify that personal vehicle delivery drivers must have a vehicle with a fixed roof. I now have a hard top I can permanently bolt on, so I'm curious if I'd be able to do this again. At least I took the passenger seat out for a little more cargo room. The next one is titled, "Oh okay. I'll move the truck mum." I am a 22 female. I live with my parents, but I'm moving out in a couple weeks, so my mother and I have been bumping heads a lot. The biggest thing we fight about is my clothes and my sleep. Recently, it's been more about my sleep than anything else. I go into work at 2 p.m. every day at my full-time job, so I'm there relatively late. When I get home, I like to decompress, play video games, watch TV, work out, and make something light to eat. I don't always do all of these things in the same day, but what I'm getting at is I stay up late. I get off around 11, home by 11:15, and I won't go to sleep until around 3/4 morning. The latest being 4 if I'm with my boyfriend. She wakes me up every day from between 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. But it's never just once, she'll do it 2 to 4 times in the morning until I can't go back to sleep and I'm upset. She doesn't even wake me up for important crap. It's either to witch at me or make me do something for her. I've asked her time and time again to stop waking me up. I have a hard time going back to sleep. Could you please just let me sleep until 11 a.m. and when I'm up I'll do what you need me to do, but she never listens. Well, currently, she's been having work done on her house. The workers are in their final stages, so they're just painting the house. Well, once again she woke me up at 7:30 a.m. today by barging into my room to move her truck because the workers are here. I groan, get up, and throw on a nightgown she doesn't like. We've had several fights about this nightgown because it's short, even though it's long enough to cover everything it needs to. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought about changing, but instead I smirked and thought to myself, if you can't respect my boundaries, why am I going to respect yours? I keep the nightgown on. I walk out of my room, move the truck, and go back inside. As soon as she sees me while I'm walking back to my room, she starts screaming, "Katwanguterus, you went outside like that? You're basically naked. Why do you hate me?" She's standing in front of me trying to block my way from going to my room. I duck underneath her arms and ignore her. My mother starts following me while yelling about me living with her and my father, so I can't be dressing like whore around their house, especially when my father and working men are around. I get into my room, close the door, and take off the nightgown, so I'm butt-ass naked about to lay back down, and she swings my door open, still trying to argue with me. "I can't believe you would embarrass me like that. Put on some ducking clothes. We're talking." I laugh in her face and close the door on her. She attempts to reopen the door, so I grab the handle. I'm not allowed locks on my door. Dude, no. I'm naked. We're not even talking. You're just yelling. The truck is moved. Please, leave me alone. She starts sobbing about how everyone is so mean to her. She hates her life and stomps off to call my dad to complain about me. ETA 1. Please stop telling me to move out and pay my own bills. That's literally the whole plan in next few weeks if y'all could actually read the freaking post. 2. Well, you can't hate it that bad if you live there still, since you've been over the age of 18 for 4 years. Oh my god. I moved out when I was 19. My ex-boyfriend was beating the crap out of me. The abusive relationship I was in ducked up a lot of things, including my finances. I was 20 about to turn 21, lost and ducking, confused. My parents let me move back in. I've been saving for a car of my own, which my abusive ex ruined, to get my credit up so I can get a car loan, and to save up money so I can put a down payment on a car, and also all the extra fees apartments charge when you get approved to move in. I haven't just been sitting on my butt living with my parents. I've been getting my crap together, and it's taken time because I ducked up. I ruined my life because of a bad relationship I was in. 3. You're obviously not grateful for your mother. I love my mum to death, but she can be toxic and abusive and manipulative. I didn't leave one toxic relationship just to hop back into another one. I deserve respect and privacy. The very minimum. I love my mum, but I'm allowed to vent. None of you know anything about me. The next one is titled, Don't Want to Move. Enjoy your ripped recliner. Every night, I wheel my bird's cage from our living room into the guest room so he can sleep in a quieter place. This is routine, as we've had him for around 7 years. My dad is always sitting in a recliner that directly blocks the path to the guest room. If he doesn't sit up and unrecline, I can't get through without damaging the recliner. Last night, I went to wheel the cage in. My dad didn't sit up. Our conversation went as follows: me, Dad, can you unrecline? No answer. Me, louder, Dad, can you unrecline? Still no answer. He has no hearing impairment or anything, and he was just scrolling through Twitter and wouldn't sit up. Dad, just squeeze through, it's fine. I knew that it wouldn't be fine, since the cage can't fit through there without damage, but oh well. Cue malicious compliance, that's exactly what I did. I pushed the cage through the gap, and ended up ripping the recliner. The food catch at the bottom of his cage has sharp edges, and got the recliner near the bottom. There was a huge rip in the fabric and some of the fluff started to come out. My dad was furious. He started screaming about it being a nice recliner, how I wrecked it, and all that jazz. He now has to buy a new one, since that one is ripped badly. I can't say for sure, but something tells me he'll unrecline when I ask him to tonight. Edit, I've been reading comments, and wanted to clarify something. My room is on the 2nd floor, and we can't wheel the cage up and down a flight of stairs every day. My room is also rather loud, as we live right by a park and rowdy teenagers hop the fence and blast music. It's almost guaranteed to wake up the bird if he sleeps on my side of the house. The next one is titled, "Have a staff meeting knowing I can't attend and give me the worst shift possible, then I'll quit but I won't notify you." This happened many moons ago, like 20 years. So I used to work in a restaurant as a hostess and part-time busser, for tips. I always took the weak sections other bussers didn't like because they were less busy and running dish tubs killed my back. But someone has to take those sections, right? Might as well be me. Win-win. I was a hostess for 4 days and I bussed for 1. The manager of the hostesses was okay, but she was kind of a jerk sometimes. A little bit of backstory: one night someone puked in the women's restroom. The hostess manager asked me to clean it up. I told her sorry, I'm not qualified for that. She gave me a blank look and said, "Excuse me? Go clean it." So I told her that I have not been trained in the proper disposal of bodily waste and that it's against OSHA's rules to handle said waste without the proper training. She was upset, but she knew I was right. So she made a different hostess clean it up and glared daggers at me the rest of the night. I think the hostess manager was miffed about the above incident and slightly had it out for me. The hostess schedule used to be random and everyone would get varied shifts opening, mid, closing. Nobody liked closing because the closing shift had to clean everything. Hostess manager suddenly decides that the hostess crew is going to go to fixed shifts. Now, I was in a play in college so could only work certain hours. She had the staff meeting during hours I couldn't attend. I wasn't even informed of the meeting. She then assigned everyone a permanent shift. Guess what shift I got? Yup, closing. This is where the possible malicious compliance comes in. So, like most jobs, you are required to give a 2-week notice if you're going to quit, plus it's a good thing to do if you don't want them trashing you to your future employer. So I gave my notice. To the manager of the busing staff. I figured as long as I gave it to a manager, it didn't matter who. They all belonged to the same company and worked together. Plus, I didn't want to see the hostess manager since I was ticked at her. Apparently the busser manager never shared my notice with the hostess manager. My next scheduled shift after my 2 weeks was up, I get an angry call from her. "Why aren't you here, or why isn't there a replacement here for you if you're sick?" We were required to call every coworker to try to cover our shift if we couldn't make it. Sometimes, if we couldn't find anyone, they'd still try to make us come in. I told her I don't work there anymore, I gave my notice. She said, "No you didn't, I never received it." I told her I gave it to the other manager. She tried telling me that I had to give one to her too and that since I didn't then she would count me as a no-call, no-show and note in my employee file that I was fired, but I argued the hell out of that one and she finally dropped it. I also called the busser manager to talk to him about it and he laughed and told me not to worry about it, that it was all good. I always wondered if maybe he didn't like her either. Not a total in-your-face take that kind of moment, but it sure made me feel good that she now had to scramble to fill my position. The funny thing is, all the hostess staff knew I was leaving because I told them when it was my last day, etc. None of them said a word to her. In case anyone is concerned, there were usually 4 to 5 hostesses on shift, so my absence didn't impact them too terribly much. I saw some of them later and they said they didn't hold it against me at all. It just made their nights less boring since there was less downtime. The next one is titled, "Guilty of Doing a Good Job." This happened to me a few years back. I was working in the IT help desk of a well-known restaurant based in Chicago. I had gotten the job through the help of a friend of mine, who was the help desk manager at the time. My friend was very adamant about checking in on the help desk ticket metrics and making sure that everyone in the team was pulling their own weight. Basically, for those who don't know, most help desks use a ticketing system to keep track of all IT requests that come in. Anyway, my friend was known for being good about his particular ticket metrics tracking and being able to decipher them and later present them to the leadership team. However, he was laid off due to a squabble he had with one of the directors of a different department. This had happened at the same time that a new CIO was hired. In comes a new IT manager, who had eventually admitted to me that he was actually close friends with the CIO and that had never held a management position ever in his life. I found out that his skill set was in programming and scripting, but his weakness was confrontation as well as other management procedures. However, his biggest flaw was that he followed processes and procedures to a T, one of those being that, for some god-awful reason, we were not allowed to discuss any tickets with anyone. This was supposed to be interpreted as the help desk not being able to discuss tickets to other individuals outside of the IT department due to the sensitivity of their nature. If I brought up ticket to my manager, he would shut me up and say he didn't want to hear about it. About a month went by when the time came for metrics evaluations. I was escorted into a conference room by my manager. He tells me that out of all the individuals of the IT help desk, I had the most reopened tickets in the queue. I should mention that, by this point of my time working there, my manager had decided to push my shift from the regular first shift, 9 to 5, over to second shift, which was from 1 to 10. This was to provide coverage for shops outside of our time zone. I explained to him that there were a plethora of reasons why I had opened tickets. One being that every day that I came in, I was stuck working at the mass amount of tickets that the morning shift neglected to touch. I was on my own working from 6 to 10, and ultimately, the main reason to my reopens I could not discuss, per his policy. He got really angry with me and said that I needed to improve my numbers and get less reopened tickets. Instead of arguing, I simply complied and went on my way. Another month went by, and by this time, I had accrued more tickets in my name, which also meant more tickets being reopened. I get called into a meeting again, and this time it's with my boss, the CIO, and the head of HR. They bring up my reopened ticket count, and I again explain the same gripes from the past. They placed me on a corrective action program, and simply told me, if you can't fix by the next time we meet, we are going to have to fire you. My immediate response was, well, if you fire me, I will seek legal counsel. I told you that I cannot discuss my tickets with you thanks to my manager's strict policy guidance. He has the ability to go look at the tickets, but refuses. The CIO threatened to get the ticket system vendor to send a specialist to get a fully detailed report to see just how bad I was doing. I kept my cool and simply said, sure, let's go with that. If you see that I really have been failing, then I will voluntarily quit. The following week, the vendor shows up and he is set up in one of the conference rooms. I would swing by from time to time, asking if he needed anything. He knew who I was by this point, and all he would say is, "This is funny as hell. I can't wait to provide this report." Towards the end of the day, I get called into the conference room. I see my manager, the CIO, the head of HR, the vendor, and now even the CEO of the company. My manager is pale as if he'd seen a ghost. The CIO couldn't look at me in the eye and was at a loss of words. I broke the silence and, without trying to appear smug, ask, "Is everything all right?" The vendor excitedly announces, "Well kid, the only thing you are guilty of is being a damn good employee." The CEO immediately interrupted and apologized on behalf of the company for having put me through so much crap. At this point, I knew exactly what happened, but I wanted to hear it straight from the source. I look at the vendor and ask him to read out the rest of the report. He then says, "With you being the only individual to close the most tickets compared to all of your colleagues combined, you have the reopen rate of about 95%. Out of those 95%, only 2% are reopened due to the fixes not sticking or due to a completely irrelevant issue, which you all should let your employees know to create new tickets for rather than reopening a previous ticket. As for the other 93%, they are all people responding, thanking you for your work." He almost couldn't contain his laughter while presenting the physical report. He further went on to mention that all this could have been avoided had I been able to discuss these tickets with my boss, or if my boss even bothered to actually go look at the tickets themselves. About another month later, my boss tells me that he wants to promote me to the IT lead position as well as give me a raise. I turned it down. It was the perfect opportunity for me and told him I was putting in my 2 weeks' notice. He tried talking me out of it, but there was no way he could convince me. I basically told him that any confidence and trust I had with the company was destroyed during my earlier debacle. My raise at the time was withheld due to his own mistakes, and there was no way the company would be able to match the offer I was being given at the new gig. Update: this is pulled from one of the comments below. So basically, one of my previous colleagues had informed me that my manager had been outed for his lack of experience. However, things got even more messy. It turned out that one of the directors, specifically the one who got my original friend fired, had been caught up in an embezzlement scandal which roped in his own team, the CIO, and my manager. Apparently they were all in cahoots with another vendor, accepting bribes, to keep using that vendor's services. So a large chunk of the IT department had been eviscerated. What's even more wild is that sometimes I will walk into the shops and ask how their IT equipment is holding up. I will then say, I used to work for the IT department, I'm just curious as to how things have been since I left. I almost always get a response similar of, man, I really wish, insert name, still worked here. That guy would always be a pleasure to work with and was super dedicated to his work. The other guys don't even respond to my requests. I smile and then say, oh, did the guy sound like this? And then I'd reiterate my shtick when I answered IT calls. The looks I get when I reveal my identity to them is always amazing. I apparently became a hero in their eyes. The last one is titled, You Won't Pay $100 for a New Hard Drive. Okay, enjoy paying $22,000 for my time to deal with the problem. I had a job where I had a computer which was, incidentally, also the web server for a very important internal web application. I thought this was really stupid that it wasn't in a server room being managed by IT, but for some weird reason they wouldn't do it. I didn't use this application or have anything to do with it, but it took up a large chunk of the hard drive and made it slow. I didn't even know what it was on the hard drive, so there was a bunch of old development software I could never remove for fear of harming the application. I was also not permitted to turn the machine off or even sign out nights or weekends so it would be running whenever anyone needed the application. I had to just lock the screen and leave it. This application was apparently something developed by my department before I joined the company. And everyone involved with it was no longer there, and nobody really knew anything about how it worked other than that this machine had to be running and signed in, and it wasn't developed in our normal system and wasn't in our code repository. By the end of my time with the company, they'd had such turnover that I was literally the only person in the department who knew it was even there. I was a web developer and I required a vast amount of disk space for my work, for reasons mostly relating to how moronic management was about process. I had to keep 3 complete copies of everything the company ever developed. I often ran out of disk space. I had to use increasingly desperate measures to deal with this, up to and including deleting anything that Microsoft included with Windows that I didn't actually need, like the camera app on a PC with no camera. It quickly got to the point that I had to call IT to tell them my PC was becoming unusable due to disk space and could they please do something about it, and suggested that because of this application they might want to take this PC into management and give me a different one. I thought they would do something like replace the computer, identical would be fine as long as it didn't have this application on it, or give it a larger internal disk, or maybe even just attach an external disk. I would still have a slow machine, but I'd have had the space to do my work, but they told me that I'd have to remove what I could and defrag the disk to make more space, and I would just have to suffer, and please don't call them about this again. I talked to my boss and was told that its word was final and I would just have to deal with it. So it'd get bad, I'd remove what I could and start a defragment, and the machine would become too slow for me to use for about 24 hours, during which time I could do no work. This happened about once a week, so it took about 1/5 of my time. Not counting time spent looking for stuff to delete. I kept telling management this was happening, and they kept telling me to shut up and deal with it, but at least when they wanted me to do stuff and it was, I can't, my computer is busy clearing disk space and is presently unusable, they moaned but understood and left me alone. So, because IT was too lazy to do anything and management was too lazy to go to bat for me and the company was unwilling to spend $100 on an external hard drive, they got to spend over $22,000 a year on salary for me to sit around and wait for the machine to make some space so I could do my work. That wasn't my salary. That was the portion of my salary that they were wasting on this problem. Not counting the value of the time of everyone else that had to do my work while I couldn't. Oh, and it was getting to the point that I wouldn't be able to deal with it at all. There wasn't anything left to delete and defragging wasn't reclaiming any more space, and the company's internal software took up more and more space every day, and I estimated I had about a week left before it became fully unusable, when I had a heart attack and a stroke and never went back. I occasionally think, with, admittedly, some glee, of the panic it must have caused when they no doubt turned off the computer and sent it to IT to be wiped, and a few hours later panicked users started calling demanding to know where their precious application that they couldn't live without was, only for my evil management to say, honestly, what application? Thanks for listening.